Have you ever been interviewed?
Not very often.
No?
Not very often.
Oh, awesome. Well, let's do it. Let's interview him.
Okay. Go ahead.
Missoula Podcast, episode 53. Here in studio with Stephen Ressett and the living legend, Denny Bedard. Denny, how are you?
My first podcast ever,
Really?
guys.
Would you
So,
say 48 years
Yeah, so be gentle.
of broadcast, of
Yeah.
radio, of interviewing, and now we're flipping the script, turning the tables, and we get to interview you, hear your story.
How old are podcasts? I don't even know.
I don't know, 20 years?
We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary.
Well, congratulations.
Last week
Yeah,
was
that's
our
great.
52nd episode.
Yeah.
So I guess relatively young. I didn't realize, 48 years of
Yeah.
radio.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you get your start?
I started I was still in college when I got my first radio gig. I'd always been kind of fascinated by it. And when I pledged my fraternity house when I was a freshman at the University of Montana, because I'm a Missoula kid, born and raised here. The room I was assigned to, my roommate was a part-time disc jockey at KYLT radio, AM 1340. It was one of maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 radio stations in Missoula at the time. And so he was a weekend guy. He would work a 6 to midnight shift on Saturday and or Sunday or things like that. And back then, back in the 70s, security was pretty lax, shall we say. You could walk in and out of the door as you pleased. And it was about 4 doors down from a popular bar, so that wasn't always a smart thing in the middle of the night. But I would go down to the studio and hang out with him. It was because we were good friends, and it was fun to watch. And then it was from fun to watching. Said, "Here, try this. Why don't you do this and do that?" And so I learned how to. You had to manually run everything, run the board. You had to cue the vinyl, and you had to load up all the commercials on their own separate cartridges and all those kinds of things. I learned how to do that. And a job opening came up, and my roommate recommended me, and they gave me an all night shift. I was still trying to get through school. My last quarter, there were still quarters at the time. My last quarter at the university, I got the job.
That's
Somehow
awesome.
got through it, and I've never gone away. I never sought out anything else to do. I had no reason to leave here. There were times where maybe it was a little bit lateral for extended periods of time, but I always found a way to kind of keep moving upward as far as my career is concerned.
Let's go back a little bit to the beginning. You said you're born and raised, you're a Missoula boy.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to high school?
Hellgate.
Hellgate boy. And then you go to the University of Montana. What did you go to school for initially?
I was an English major and a history minor, and with an emphasis on secondary education because I thought I would want to be a teacher. And back then, everybody wanted to be a teacher. And if you wanted to get a job in Montana, you were probably going to end up in some very small town in a very remote location, if you got a job at all. And if you didn't have extra things that you could offer as far as maybe coaching or those kinds of things, I probably could have coached tennis. I lettered in tennis in high school, but that was as close as an extracurricular I might have been able to offer. It was long odds getting a job as a high school English teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I took 4 credits. I took 2 radio TV classes. It wasn't, it was always a fascination, but it wasn't something that I sought out as for my college education. It just sort of happened that way. And so again, I got the midnight to 6 job, and then that became the evening job because we added a radio station. We added another FM station to the band, a classic rock station that we now call Z100. I don't remember exactly what we called it then, but it was really kind of one of the early stations that used an automation system. All of the songs were on these massive reel-to-reel tapes, and they would have cue tones that would stop them when they needed to, and it would automatically fire commercials. There was still a lot of manual loading, but they kind of got a sense of, this this FM rock station seems to be doing pretty good. Why don't we put announcers on there instead of it just being a jukebox? And so I became I think the first live announcer that station had, and stayed with them for quite a while. There was a brief, there was a falling out, and they did a couple of things that just didn't sit well. And so I did walk away, but I was out of a radio job for maybe a month or two. I was also moonlighting at a record store, and got once the competitor found out that I was moonlighting at a record store and not working at the competitor anymore, he found a job for me, and they really needed somebody. Can you write ad copy? I said, yeah, I'm a pretty good writer. So, well, we really need somebody to handle a lot of our copy. If you're willing to start there, you can still keep your job at the record store. You can get back into the broadcast biz. So I said, yeah. And one morning they had an announcer on their top 40 radio station who, by his own admission, knew absolutely nothing about sports. He said, just getting to know you, it seems like you know a lot about sports. I do. I do okay. I want a sports cast on my morning drive show, but I can't do it. I can't be the guy to do it. So I said, well, I can throw that together for you. And so the morning came, my first morning on the air to be his sports guy. And we're 30, 45 seconds from airtime. I'd had an air name. And he said, I didn't ask you who you're going to be on here. Oh yeah. Well, I guess just use my regular name, my real name. And so, Denny Bedard went on XT93 FM as the sports guy, eventually became the program director, and, stayed with them and finally got into sales, because I always wanted to sell advertising, because that's the creative end too. Selling ideas, writing, producing, and things like that. If you can come up with a way to supplement your broadcast income by doing that, then you seize that opportunity, and that's what happened. And that carries us into about the late 80s, I think. So, guys, only got about 34 more years to go.
I know, this is so great.
This is great.
Like those times is like when you're a kid, Steven, and you're like sitting around the fire and like grandpa's telling you a story. Like, that's what I felt like. I could just keep listening.
Yeah.
It's such a great story. You're a great storyteller.
You really are. What was it about radio? Was it the music? Was it the sports? And second question, your voice. Did you always have this deep, low, buttery voice, or was that developed over just being on?
Well, let's see. Question number one, I don't know. I really don't know. I was one of those kids who was just glued to the radio at all times, one of their little contest groupies when I was a kid. And that part of it evolved from there. The second question is, I don't think so. Things changed when I was playing shortstop during a PE class, my freshman year at the university. And you can imagine these were not the best groomed fields in America to be playing softball on. And a ground ball comes right at me, and I wasn't a bad infielder. I'm ready. I'm ready to scoop the ball and throw him out at first. And it took a bizarre hop and hit me pretty much right between the eyes. Both eyes were black, and it was up in the up on the bridge of the nose, and kind of stunned me. And they took me to health service and things like that. And he said, the doctor who treated me said, this is because of this, you're going to have a deviated septum. So here's what we would have to do to repair your deviated septum. And, when you're 18 or 19 years old and a doctor's describing something like that to you, it just sounds so gross and hideous. You want nothing to do with it. And you don't have to. You can live with it. You will be subject to, you're going to be a little more subject to sinus infections and things like that throughout your life, but it's not something you can't live with. So I lived with it. And yeah, it was probably also part of the fact that I'm, finally reaching puberty. No, a few years past that, but it did change a little bit.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, guy reached on an error. And did not cleanly field the ball.
Dang it.
Yeah, yeah. It'll always haunt me, guys.
I know.
Yeah, and so I was able to find to get into a position where I could write advertising copy, where I could sell, and also be an air personality. Hybrid positions like that they were rare then, they're rare now.
So that was the late 80s.
Into the early 90s.
Okay.
I left Top 40 Radio. I left that company mainly because a guy that I had worked with there, who I thought the world of, I thought he was just terrific. He was the sales manager there. He had an opportunity to go to work across town at a news talk station, just a standalone, just the one AM radio station. And I just always thought the world of him. And, he'd been there for about a year or so. And he got to me and said, this is what I'm looking for. I just want to know if you might be interested. We have this, we do a 2-hour news block. It's KGVO radio, AM 1290. We do a 2-hour news block in the morning. We do a 2-hour news block in the afternoon. And they did, that's what they did. But then the rest of the day, there were hours of the day where they played kind of this, eclectic sort of adult contemporary music. I still don't know that I could really describe it, but it was what they had, and then they had a couple of other long form talk segments on, mainly in the evening, because at the time there wasn't necessarily that much to pick and choose from. And a tricky part about talk radio is, if you commit to a syndicated talk show host, you don't just take, we'll take an hour of a thing. No, you contractually commit to however long that show is. If it's a 3-hour a day show, then you've just blocked off 3 hours of your radio station's content. It better be okay, at least. So he said, we'd really like somebody to kind of guide this ship and figure out which direction to go. And so I got settled in. I said, well, yeah, you really got to get rid of this music format. It doesn't make any sense, and it's not what we're hanging our hat on right now. So we need to look at more syndicated programming. There's this guy named Rush Limbaugh that's doing pretty good. Why don't we go with him? So like him, not like him, that one's on me. And
but he was doing pretty good.
He was doing, did pretty well for himself.
Yeah, he was probably in his I don't know, maybe second or third year of that show when we signed on. Larry King was still a mainstay. They had a couple of lifestyle advice talk show hosts, Bruce Williams and Sally Jesse Raphael, that was her name. But so now we have Rush Limbaugh, and we had to try to find other long form syndicated hosts to make this an all news talk station. And in the early 90s, that was not that easy of a thing to do, especially in a small market. If you're in a bigger market, yeah, you got a few guys, you got your local guys that can do that.
Right.
And so that's how we had to, we built KGVO from there. And
how long have you been with KGVO?
Technically now it would be about 33 years, because it was a standalone KGVO owned by a businessman here in Missoula who was hands-on. He was active. He was in office there. But this is about the time that the FCC started deregulating radio. There was a firm rule or law that you can have one AM station, you can have one FM station in your market. That's it. They started relaxing that. And so standalone KGVO radio was purchased by a couple of local owners here in Missoula, Mark Ward and Dale Moore, doing business as Western Broadcasting. And they had 2 stations. So they acquired KGVO. So I came over with that sale to work for them. So now I'm working for a company with 3 radio stations, and we went along like that for a few years, and we added another one, and that's when a national broadcast firm approached them in 1997 and said, with D-Rig, we're interested in buying your radio stations. And the two of them said, oh, well, all right. Here's the price tag. And I guess there's nothing wrong with saying here's the price tag. That'll be 4.5 million. And this company said, well, you're Missoula, Montana. No, but they said, okay, well, thanks for giving us some thought. If you ever change your mind, you know where to find us. And by the way, that figure is firm. And they came back a short time later and made the purchase.
Wow.
We added more stations from there. But now, it's nice to be acknowledged by the company I work for now, Town Square Media, as being a 30-plus year Town Square Media employee, because standalone KGVO became Marathon Media. Standalone KGVO became Western Broadcasting. Western Broadcasting became Marathon Media. Marathon Media sells, it becomes Clear Channel. Clear Channel sells, it becomes Gap Broadcasting. Gap Broadcasting merges with what was called Gap West Broadcasting, which eventually was absorbed by Town Square Media. So in that span of 33 years, I've been through 7 sales. But
wow.
So I've been with Town Square Media about 20 years longer than Town Square Media has existed, but nice of them to look at it that way. So that's as far as the hybrid position here, that with them, that evolved more 20 some years ago, and that's what I still get to do today.
What has been some of like the highest moments of your radio career? What's maybe the worst part of it?
I was just gonna ask that too. Like, what are some of your great interviews? Who have you got to?
You mean before the Missoula podcast?
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it mostly has to do. When Western Broadcasting acquired KGVO, they didn't really need somebody for KGVO. They needed somebody to help program their country station, because it was it still is. It is still a big brand, but it was a huge brand then, and so that's where they wanted me. So I kind of settled into that, and it was an awkward transition at first, because so I just come over with this sale, and I've been on the job there with them for a couple of months. And it's time for a programming meeting. So the two owners, Mark and Dale, bring all the announcers into the conference room, me included. And they said, listen, we're hiring a consultant firm. We need to try to figure out a much more detailed structure as far as hierarchy and who's in charge of what and who's supervising who. We just need more of that. We're growing, and we really don't have that. So one of the things they've recommended is that we have an operations manager. And again, in front of a bunch of my coworkers have been there a lot longer than I have. They say, and so we think the operations manager should be you, Denny. And okay, what is that exactly? I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know. So they did go through a consultant firm that created sort of the whole pyramid thing as to who oversees what. But now I'm in charge of all these guys that have been working there a long time, that they don't know me very well. They just met me, but it worked out. But I was primarily, I maintained a presence on the country station. I was the midday announcer on the country station. And every time, one of the neat things about being an announcer is that you get a lot of backstage opportunities. And every time a country artist came to town, I got to meet them.
Oh, cool.
And, it's not a name dropping thing. It happened to be people like Reba McEntire and Brooks and Dunn and Alan Jackson and Travis Tritt and Vince Gill, and just on and on. So that's really one of the special things about it. And I got to interview a few of them just briefly. Winona Judd I interviewed, Joe Diffie I interviewed, Alan Jackson just real briefly. But
when you're going in and sitting down with them,
yeah,
what I mean, you're the expert here. What questions do you ask? How do you know where to start?
Well, you do a little homework.
Yeah.
You make sure,
We just wing it every week.
Well, yeah. You don't do that when you're talking to Winona Judd.
Sure.
And I was told she is I won't say it on the Missoula podcast. I said, oh, all right. That was a phone interview. And they said, Winona's going to be calling you at 11:45, or no, she's going to be calling you at noon. And, she'll probably give you 10 or 15 minutes. And again, this goes back into the 90s where Paul Harvey news and commentary was a big, big deal. And you better not miss Paul Harvey news. And we still had to record it manually, reel to reel. It fed at 11:45. So, okay, great. It's 15-minute segment. Paul will be done. Then Winona will call and everything will be fine. And you hate to promote a live interview, especially via phone. Hey, Winona herself is going to be on in 30 minutes. You hope that's true,
Right.
but things can happen. Things can go wrong. So doing the show, Paul Harvey is now recording. It's 11:45. The phone rings. Kiss FM. Hi, it's Denny. Denny, it's Winona. I'm early, honey. Yeah, you are. Now what do I do? I said, you know what? I just started recording Paul Harvey. That's a really big deal around here. I'm so sorry, but it runs till 15 minutes, till noon. She said, oh, so you want me to call back? I said, if at all possible. She said, all right. I hung up the phone. You stupid idiot. What are the odds of that happening? That she called back.
Awesome.
She was still getting her hair did. So, it worked out all right. But I had heard she was vicious and everything but. In fact, I think the last question I asked her is that, are you always this nice when you're interviewing? She said, no.
Well, at least she was honest.
Caught her on a good day. But usually if you get to interview them, it's just a couple questions here and there. That's how Alan Jackson was. But so, how you doing? Welcome to Missoula. How's the tour going? Your song's great, things like that.
Yeah.
It's not a long, it's not the Missoula podcast.
Right. It's not.
You don't have
you don't have 2 or 3 hours.
You don't have an undetermined length.
Exactly.
Yeah. This must be driving you crazy that we don't have a clock up there counting us
It's
down.
It's different. He knows that. Brandon knows that because I'll show him we got 5 minutes left or we got 2 minutes left.
I've been in studio with Denny and
he runs a
they've
tight
got
ship.
It's regimented because I have to fit. It's a weekly real estate program but I have to fit it into a 29-minute, 50-second hole because there's going to be another program right afterwards at the bottom of the hour. We got to get them both in an hour.
Is that like thrilling to be up against the clock in a way?
I am my own, as Brandon knows, again, I am my own producer and director. And so I'm making eye contact with him while we're interviewing, but I'm also looking up at my audio screen. I'm making sure the levels are okay. And I'm looking at the timer.
He does an incredible job. I mean, it feels like he navigates it. And we come in, just wrap it up right on time. As far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've ever ran over.
No, we've seldom been long or short. It usually times out pretty well. And it's great to interview somebody who interviews so well, like Brandon does. And that show, that isn't always the case. There are people that have never done it before. There are people that I always send a list of, I email, 15 questions, prep questions. And some of them will type out their entire answers, between my questions on the one sheet that I send them. And that's great if you can read those answers and not sound like you're reading answers. But that is not always the case, guys. Sometimes people just sound like they are reading. Others can, I can pull that off. I do that well. I can read something you wouldn't know I was reading.
Right, sure.
And some of my guests are just fine. But then there are others that they're very tight and they're very nervous. And those are the ones that we usually end up short because, they'll type 8, 10, 12 lines to an answer. And you think, okay, I got this question. That's maybe a minute.
Sure.
So those are the ones that you find yourself veering off course. I never like to blindside anybody. Well, you find yourself veering off course, asking additional questions
Right.
just to make sure.
Fill some time.
Yeah, you're going to be at least close to 28 minutes and 58
Well,
seconds.
let's do this. Let's go off course.
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to the story. Denny, on the podcast, we got our rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
Born and raised in Missoula, but looking
sir.
back, what is one of your earliest memories of Missoula, Montana?
Well, my first memory was being put in a police car when I was 3 or 4 years old and crying my eyes out till they brought me back home because I had grabbed my dog by the tail and he just kept walking. So that's about the first one that I can remember. Beyond that, probably just everyday things, playing kickball in the street because traffic didn't matter at the time, and going to church with my mom and dad, and midnight mass on Christmas Eve. That was a big deal because it was still actually midnight instead of the 9 p.m. midnight mass, and just a lot of nothing really out of the ordinary. Just kid growing up stuff.
Yeah, amazing. So being a late night DJ in your early years,
Right.
obviously had to drink some coffee. What is your go-to coffee spot in Missoula?
Today, the Florence Coffee Company.
Go.
Yeah.
Solid. How
All
about
right. Rapid fire one.
favorite restaurant?
Paradise Falls.
Solid.
Solid.
Have we had that?
I don't think so.
The food is really good. They've got wonderful service, and they're one of my big clients. So maybe I didn't put those in the right order.
I
Amazing.
love it.
Yeah. One of my favorite advertisers is Paradise Falls.
What zip code do you currently live in?
59801.
59801.
What do you love most about Missoula?
Everything related to the University of Montana. It's always felt like my home. There was no doubt in my mind where I was going to go to college after high school. There was no doubt in my mind that I was not going to, skip a year and do something between high school and college. I don't think they called them gap years back then, but I wasn't taking any gap years. I was going right to University of Montana. And then the friendships and the relationships I made that I still retain after all these years with some of my fraternity brothers. University of Montana sports. It's just always been kind of part of my life's fabric.
What fraternity were you in?
Theta Chi, dear old
Okay.
Theta Chi.
What to you is one of the weirdest things about Missoula?
Right now, it's our obsession with traffic circles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we like them.
they're
How's that
popping
for-
up everywhere.
How's that for a rapid fire answer to
Yeah,
a rapid fire question?
No,
Enough said.
they're everywhere.
Oh yeah, and more on the way.
Denny, has there been a specific book that has made an impact on your life more than any others?
Can I say more than one?
Absolutely.
All right, for two different reasons. I'm the youngest of three. My brother, who is 9 years older than me, immediately started teaching college courses right after he got his master's degree. So I'm still a kid, and he gets his first college teaching job at Black Hills State in I believe it's in Spearfish, South Dakota, but he lived in Belle Fourche, South Dakota, 15 miles apart, or vice versa.
Mhm.
And so mom and dad load me up in the car, and we go visit them during a summer vacation because he was teaching summer courses, and he's a professor of literature. He's teaching English, and he said, "Well, why don't you come? I'm teaching a class. Why don't you come watch?" Oh, neat! I get to watch my brother teach college. And the book they were working on at the time was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and it wasn't so much because it was that book. It was because that was the book my big brother is teaching. And so I've lost count of how many times I've read that book, but it had that, I guess he just had that influence or that effect on me that I thought that was pretty neat, that my 25, 26-year-old brother is teaching college, and he's teaching One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So it always stayed with me. And then a couple of books that address just the whole, kind of what we were talking about before we went on the air about high school basketball tournaments, just how much a high school basketball team in a small town means to those communities. And that it's just always resonated with me. There's one called Blind Your Ponies, and there's one called Counting Coup, both about Montana high school basketball. And it gave me a greater respect for those people and just what it really means.
I read Blind Your Ponies every year before the basketball season, and it's so good.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Try Counting Coup.
I've never read that. I will. Thank you. Well, let's get back into your story. You've no doubt loved sports, been around sports.
Right.
What is your favorite sport to be involved in?
Oh, college basketball.
College basketball. Yeah. Why is that?
I've just always been fascinated with the whole the ballet, the everything that goes into the spirit of team and the excitement of it and the strategy that's involved. And you watch so much of it after a point, you kind of can anticipate what's going to happen in the mind of a coach sometimes, right? I know when you're going to call a timeout and things like that, but I've just, it's funny. I seldom watch a professional basketball game. It's as much as I love basketball, it's not the same to me, but college basketball and then high school basketball is probably maybe behind college football and NFL football. So football and basketball mainly. Basketball, football.
Love that.
What is your role now in the radio station? You're obviously on the show. You
Right.
said you're still kind of multitasking, doing some
Right. Yeah.
writing. But what is your
It
job
really
description?
it hasn't changed much in a long time. I am a account executive. I sell radio advertising and digital advertising, so I have an account list, but it's much smaller than the account lists that my coworkers who work full time in sales have, because I'm on the air too. I'm also a radio personality on one of our bigger important radio stations, and so I've always, might sound kind of schmaltzy, I don't know. I've always looked at it as I don't have to do what I do. I get to do what I do because it's hybrid positions like that in broadcasting are kind of rare, and I'm proud that I've made, frankly, a pretty successful living at it.
Your love for sports, your buttery voice, I think is what Steven called it earlier, has actually opened up doors and opportunities. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing with the University of Montana for the last several years.
It's funny you use that word. The University of Montana mascot, Monty, very, very well known and very popular and very famous. And the mascot in the early O's, he won mascot of the year. And so they did some posters where he's looking gigantic, kind of leaning against the tower of Main Hall, but he's bigger than Main Hall. And I knew that Monty fairly well. And I said, "You got to autograph this poster for me." He said, "Oh, of course. It's still in my office." "Denny, you melt me with your buttery voice, Monty."
That's awesome. That's so great. Well, I think
I always thought that was a hoot.
That's so great.
And so, that's another get to. I get to, my passion has ended up being part of my profession because I do work for the University of Montana I'm a public address announcer for women's basketball, and I'm also the pregame and postgame anchor for football broadcasts. And that all just sort of evolved. That just kind of happened. But I take it very seriously. I do a lot of prep for it, and it's another one of those get-tos. It's kind of a special gig, and that is not lost on me. And so I appreciate and respect it all very much.
I remember this last football season, I would look forward to getting back to the vehicle after the game for two reasons. One, I was freezing. Two, I thought your post-game show, you and Sammy and the others that would be on there just have done an excellent job building that into something special where, hey, you're stuck in traffic, so it helps pass the time, but getting the details of the game and the breakdown, it was very enjoyable.
Thank you. Yeah, it's it keeps me distracted during the game because while the game is going, I mean, we have good seats. There's 4 of us, my wife and I, and then 2 of our good friends. We've had the same 4 seats together for years and years. But I usually get done with the pregame broadcast out at the Grizzly Scholarship Association tailgate site. By the time I put away gear and get things packed up and get set to go, I am typically walking into the stadium maybe a minute or 2 before kickoff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I get there in time to see them run out of the tunnel, that's fast. But I am with pen and legal pad because I'm scripting the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's a highlight that we want to use that you're talking about, Brandon, during the postgame show, I am texting with the studio operator, let's use that. We're going to use this. How about this one? No, we don't have time for that. So it's just this texting dialogue back and forth with that studio operator as to what we're going to use for highlights. But I have to know when they're going to occur, what led to the highlights. So I'm scripting the whole game. It's borderline rude, to be honest, because I'm totally disengaged from my 2 friends and my wife and all the people in front of us. So if you've gone to Grizzly football games a long time and you sat in the same areas, that the neighbors all kind of become fam, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I'm practically ignoring everybody.
Denny's the guy looking down right in the yellow pad, just getting hit in the side of the head with Twinkies during the game, just not paying attention.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah. And then once in a while, if I get a little behind, and I'll say, how long was that, pal? Ask, one of them beside me, how long was that pass? How long? They don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Do you remember what time on the clock it was? I'm missing. I don't know what time it was. So I have to rely on myself.
You're doing a job here, people. Help me out.
That's it. Rewarded nicely for doing a job, but it is a job. And so I'm not the most focused fan as far as all the stuff going on around the game. And
I'm putting you on the spot here, Denny. You're inside the Adams Center Lady Grizz game. Can you give us a call from the game? Can we hear the public address announcer voice?
Oh, like an introduction?
Yeah. Can you give us something here?
Oh God, I need to think.
Or a starting lineup, or
kind of that. A 6'2" forward from Helena, Montana, number 40, Danny Barch.
I love it. It is
everything
buttery.
ends.
It is buttery. It is buttery.
You got to stretch that. Yeah.
So great.
Have you modeled your voice after somebody? No. You just go.
Do you have any mentors or broadcasters that you look up to?
I really don't, because I'm not a play-by-play announcer. I'm not I could not do it. I would be an awful play-by-play announcer. I don't have that ability. So you don't really have public address announcer mentors. You just kind of do it. There's a few formula things that I follow as to which players and which positions should be introduced in what order. All self-taught. That was another strange thing there. I don't know if we're running out of time.
We have no clock.
That's right. You have no clock. Well, our radio stations acquired the broadcast rights to the University of Montana in 1998. And I had to write that bid. And my boss, he wanted those Grizzlies so bad. And I thought, man, do not screw this thing up. I mean, he's advising me to say, okay, bid so much for this and this and that. But I'm on my own submitting this bid. Well, we get the bid. And part of the bid, and it was, we didn't build this into the contract, the university did. As the flagship station with the broadcast rights, you do have the right to appoint public address announcers for various events. And the sports information director at the time called me, and I guess I saw it, but I didn't pay any attention to it in the contract. He said, you guys have the rights to appoint public address announcers at football, men's basketball, women's basketball. Our football guy is retiring. He's moving on. And so we talked about it, and we thought that you would be the guy that we would like to have do that. And I said, Dave, I can't tell you how flattered I am. It's something I've always wanted to do. And I also can't believe I'm telling you no. but I'm telling you no, because we just got the rights to this, and I am going to be the guy who has to mother hen over this 2-hour pregame broadcast to make sure everything's set up, it sounds right, that my announcers, I'm not on the air, but I got to make sure that my announcers are doing everything they're supposed to be doing. I can't walk away from that and go up in the press box an hour and a half or 2 hours before game time, like you have
too
to
much
with,
stress
with a football team, because a basketball team, you need to learn, 12 names. A football team, it's just more like 70 something. There's a lot of prep, and there are so many promotional announcements. There's promotional announcements at basketball events too, but nothing like football. So you probably have to prep that for a couple of hours. I said, I can't, I can't do it. I feel awful. I can't do it. I said, but I can recommend somebody, one of my coworkers. Oh, who's that? I said, his name's Peter Christian. Maybe you know Peter. And he said, yeah, I know Peter. You think he'd want to do it? I said, I think he'd be thrilled. And so he was, and he did, and he is. But in that phone conversation, I said, there's also right now, I happen to know there's an opening for Lady Grizz basketball PA. And he says to me, oh, you want that one? I said, well, I'd like to. He says, okay. Okay. So that was my audition for Lady Grizz basketball. I said, oh, I hear there's an opening. Oh, yeah, why don't you take that one? So that is how I ended up with that job 26 years ago. And I've never let go. A couple of years later, I was doing men's basketball as well. And then I was, they took me off of that for a couple of years. They put me back on that in 2005 or 2006. So I've also put in, I don't know, maybe somewhere around 20 years for the men's team. But I did step away from that 2 seasons ago. Just wasn't anything against the team at all. I just wanted to, downsize my workload a little bit here and there. And so, but I was not about to give up the Lady Grizz. That was my first job. And, I just really have a devotion to that team. So, but that was my audition for a public address announcer. So apparently it doesn't take much to get a job as a public address announcer.
Looking back and working alongside Peter all those years,
right?
Do you wish you would have said yes to the football gig 25 years ago? Or
I don't, because when I was prefacing that whole story by saying how much I think he is there 2-3 hours ahead of a game, because there's that much more to do. Now for a basketball game, yeah, I do prep. I have all my rosters ready to go before I get to the arena. I have to be at the arena about an hour before tip-off. That's required of me. But it does not consume nearly the time and all of now he does have people. He's got a director and a stat guy, and there's a crew up there in that booth. I don't know if a lot of people know that. It's not just him up there doing all this stuff on his own. So he has help, but still, no, I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. I hadn't given it much thought, but no regrets.
Well, you do an incredible job. I love it. It's like,
thank you.
Yeah. Going to those games, it's like, just the voice of Denny. What's next for you? It's been 48 years. What are the dreams? What's coming in the future?
Well, I'm not allowed to retire until I've been doing it for at least 50 years, because they want another big ceremony and a party, and my employers do. So I don't want to not work. I don't think that's in my DNA. Yeah. I will find little ways to slow down, downsize my workload. Kind of started developing a plan to do that, and I will, of course, pick my favorite low-hanging fruit and present it to my employers one of these days soon, and say, here's what I'd like to do. What do you think? And if they say no, that doesn't work, well, tell me why, and maybe we can negotiate back and forth a little bit there. But I don't want or really need a lot more free time, just a little free time, but I've committed myself to all these side hustles. I produce and direct a statewide hunting and fishing show on Saturday mornings. I do Missoula real estate today. I do the University of Montana things. And so they're all tied to my broadcast career. It's not like I'm doing these things. It's not like, maybe I have to, come vacuum the rugs in this building you're in after hours so I can make a little extra money. It's not that at all. Everything is tied to it. And so, I just, I've been lucky enough to make some of my passions my professions.
Yeah.
Denny, I just have one more question for you. I'm always thinking about, the impact that we can have on the next generation coming up. And so as you look back over your career and somebody younger is listening to this and they want their shot in the radio business or announcing or all the things that you do or sales, what's advice that you would give to them as they get started on their journey? Maybe some things to look out for.
Yeah.
Things to do.
It's a great question. There are, because of automation and computers and whatnot, there are not as many positions available for announcers. And the positions that are available for announcers in a lot of companies now also require a fair amount of article writing, social media posting, things like that. And so that's kind of that's a tough person to find. That there's a lot of announcers now that have I know a lot of announcers who have stepped away in the last 5 to 10 years just because they did not want to be a part of that. That's not what I want to be. And I'm not a journalist. I'm not a blogger. I'm a DJ. And so there's not as many of those, but if it's something that you do have a passion for, just be ready to have the other component, or at least be willing to work on that craft, because you need both anymore. Because companies want somebody that can enhance their social media platforms because there's revenue there.
Mm-hmm.
On the sales end, it's really all about perseverance, and it's sales, not just broadcast and digital sales, but sales is a profession that it will eat its young. And so you have to be you have to be ready in some capacity to tough that out and persevere. And then when a few big things happen, and they will, then you start to embrace it more, and you get more excited about it. And you really have to, and I'm pretty good at this. You insulate yourself from the highs and lows in a sales position. Oh man, I just landed a $36,000 a year count, then the next day, my $12,000 a year account just canceled. So you try not, I don't celebrate the big wins, and I try not to mope too much about the unexpected losses. But that's hard. That's hard on salespeople, especially new ones who, thank God, finally something came my way. And then here comes the phone call. Hey, we got to cancel. Yeah. But that is the nature of the beast. There's always going to be attrition. There's no guarantee that the big clients you have on now are going to be there next year. But it can be very rewarding, and it's never the same. You have an awful lot of flexibility in your hours and your mobility in and out of an office. But if you're out screwing off, it's going to catch up with you, and people find out. But there's a lot of latitude that way. I guess that's one of the rewards of being at this 48 years. I've been given a lot of latitude.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great insight. Great advice for those young listeners, aspiring DJs.
Yeah.
But no,
Come to think of it, I didn't tell anybody I was leaving early to do the Missoula podcast.
Yeah, so hopefully you have a
I
job
hope
tomorrow.
I hope nobody missed me.
Well, no, thank you so much for coming on. It truly is an honor to interview you,
thank you,
hear your
guys.
story.
Gee.
Just proud of you and grateful for what you've invested into our community for the last 48 years. I'm happy to hear there's at least two more years where you get to enjoy that buttery voice.
So that means you'll come to the 50-year celebration.
I will be there, Denny.
Right.
I will be there. But thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciated this.
This is really neat. Thank you, guys.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.